The year is 1888. The late summer air in London's East End is thick, heavy with the smells of coal, smoke, poverty, and a rising sense of dread. In our last exploration, we looked at the brutal environment of Whitechapel and the uncertain death of Martha Tabram. But what happened next would forever etch this district into the annals of criminal history. It began on the last day of August, a day that would mark the official start of a reign of terror. In the pre-dawn hours of August 31st, a carman named Charles Cross was walking down Bucks Row, a dark and unremarkable back street. The gas lamps cast long, dancing shadows, making it hard to see. As he walked, he noticed a bundle lying on the ground near a stable entrance. Getting closer, he realized it was the body of a woman. Thinking she was merely drunk, he tried to rouse her, but there was no response. Another man, Robert Paul, approached, and together they examined the figure more closely. A dark stain was spreading from her throat. They quickly went to find a constable. The woman was Mary Ann Nichols, known as Polly. She was 43 years old. A mother of 5 who had fallen on hard times, separated from her husband, and living a transient life in the lodging houses of Whitechapel. Her death was not just a simple act of violence. When the police surgeon, Dr. Rees Llewellyn, arrived, he uncovered the true horror of the attack. It was a swift, savage, and calculated murder. The nature of her injuries was so severe that it pointed to something far beyond a typical street brawl or robbery. This was different. This was monstrous. Scotland Yard was immediately plunged into one of its most challenging cases. Detectives from the Metropolitan Police, led by Inspector Frederick Aberline, descended on Whitechapel. Their investigation began in earnest. They canvassed the area, knocking on doors and questioning anyone who might have seen or heard something. The problem was, there were almost no clues. The killer had struck with terrifying speed and precision, leaving nothing behind but his horrific handiwork. Witness statements were collected, but they were frustratingly vague and often contradictory. One witness, a Mrs. Emma Green, who lived near Bucks Row, reported hearing a cry of no around the time of the murder, but she had dismissed it as a common nighttime disturbance. Another APC, John Neal, had patrolled Bucks Row just minutes before the discovery and had seen nothing unusual. It was as if the killer had materialized from the fog, committed his terrible act, and vanished back into it without a trace. The press, a powerful force in Victorian London, seized upon the story. Newspapers like the Star and the Daily Telegraph printed sensational headlines, fanning the flames of public fear. The name Whitechapel murder became a staple of daily conversation. Illustrations depicting the dark, foggy streets and the grim discovery filled the pages, bringing the horror directly into the homes of Londoners. For the people living in the East End, the fear was palpable. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, and every stranger was viewed with suspicion. Women were warned not to walk alone after dark. Vigilance committees were formed by concerned citizens, who patrolled the streets themselves, armed with whistles and heavy sticks, hoping to deter the killer or catch him in the act. The police were under immense pressure. They followed every lead, no matter how small. They began to profile their unseen adversary. The skill and anatomical knowledge suggested by the wounds led some to believe the killer might be a doctor, a surgeon, or perhaps a butcher or slaughterman. This theory, dubbed the leather apron scare, caused panic. A local man named John Pizer, a bootmaker who had a reputation for intimidating women, was arrested. He fit the description of leather apron, and for a brief moment, the police and the public thought they had their man. But Pizer had solid alibis for the recent murders, and he was eventually released. The police were back to square one. They meticulously mapped out the crime scene, noting its proximity to major thoroughfares and dark alleyways that offered easy escape routes. They looked at Polly Nichols' last known movements. She had been seen just an hour before her death, turned away from a lodging house because she didn't have the 4pence for a bed. Her last known words were that she would soon earn her daw's money on the street. It was a tragic testament to the desperation that defined life for so many in Whitechapel. As the days turned into a week, the investigation seemed to be going nowhere. Then, on September 8th, just 8 days after Polly Nichols' murder, the killer struck again. In the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street, Spitalfields, the body of another woman, Annie Chapman, was found. The scene was eerily similar to the first. It was another pre-dawn murder in a secluded yet publicly accessible location. The ferocity of the attack had escalated. The detectives at Scotland Yard, the grim reality began to set in. This was not a series of random, unconnected crimes. The locations, the timing, the victims, the specific and brutal nature of the wounds. It was all too similar to be a coincidence. Inspector Aberline and his team laid out the maps, marking the locations of the murders. Bucks Row, Hanbury Street. They were just a short walk from each other. They reviewed the coroner's reports side by side. The similarities were undeniable. They were dealing with a single individual, a serial killer, who was stalking the impoverished women of the East End. A pattern was emerging. The hunter had a method, a signature, and he was just getting started. The autumn of terror had truly begun. Thank you for watching. If you want to follow this chilling investigation, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for part 3.